How much would you be willing to give up if it meant gaining paradise and eternity? He was handsome, wealthy, and admired. A young man who lacked nothing. Perfume from Yemen, fine garments from the Levant, sandals of the softest leather in all of Mecca. When he walked through the streets, the fragrance lingered long after he had passed. And yet, he left all of it behind. The wealth, the admiration, the comfort, for something unseen, yet eternal, for Islam, and for the hereafter. He gave up everything worldly, and with it, everything that would eventually perish. And in return, he gained the afterlife and eternity through Islam. Musab ibn Umair understood that what the world had offered him was beautiful, but fleeting. What faith gave him was invisible, but everlasting. In this video, we follow the path of a man who was more than a companion. He was the first ambassador of Islam, the first teacher in Yathrib, the young man who, through nothing but his character, his voice, and his unwavering faith, brought 1/3 of a city to Islam and paved the way for the first Islamic society and the migration of the Prophet. He once saw Musab in worn cloth, barefoot, with dignity in his eyes, and remembered the Musab of wealth and status. And he honored him, not for his past, but for his path. Who was Musab ibn Umair? Why does his life remain one of the clearest signs of sincerity, sacrifice, and strength? And what can we learn from him today? Musab ibn Umair was what many today would call a child of privilege. He was born into one of the wealthiest families of Mecca. His mother was strict but loving. She gave him everything. His clothes were of the finest quality, his sandals unmatched, and his fragrance would announce his presence before he even arrived. He was admired, intelligent, and charismatic. And yet, despite all the comforts of life, his heart was open to the truth. When he heard of the new message preached by the Prophet Muhammad, he quietly went to the house of Al-Arqam, where the early Muslims gathered. There, he heard the Quran, and his heart surrendered. He accepted Islam, not out of rebellion, but conviction. His family's reaction was severe. His mother, who had once adored him, turned against him. She locked him away, cut him off from wealth and status. But Musab did not retreat. He stood firm in his faith, even as it cost him everything: comfort, protection, and family. Musab lost everything worldly, and with it, everything that was temporary. But through Islam, he gained what lasts forever: the hereafter and nearness to Allah. Years later, he would be seen walking through Mecca, barefoot, wrapped in coarse cloth. Few recognized him. But when the Prophet saw him, he looked with gentle admiration and love, not at the loss, but at what Musab had become: a man of light and unwavering purpose. In Musab, we see a rare kind of strength, not the kind that resists others, but the kind that transforms oneself. He was willing to give up everything, not for a promise of power, but for the truth. When Musab ibn Umair lost everything the world had to offer, he was entrusted with something far greater: the mission of carrying Islam beyond Mecca. The city of Yathrib, later known as Al-Madinah al-Munawwarah, was a city divided. The two major tribes, Aus and Khazraj, had been locked in bitter conflict for generations. Blood had been spilled, trust broken. But deep within, there was a growing yearning for peace, for unity, for a purpose greater than tribal rivalry. At the first pledge of Al-Aqaba, 12 men from Yathrib had embraced Islam and asked the Prophet to send someone to teach them. The Prophet chose Musab, not for his age or experience, but for his wisdom, his humility, and his clarity of heart. Musab traveled alone. No wealth, no army, just the Quran in his heart and truth on his tongue. He stayed with Asad ibn Zurara and began his mission, house by house, person by person. He did not argue nor shout. He listened. He taught. He reflected the Quran through his character. One day, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, a leader of the Aus, came to confront him. Musab responded with calm, "Sit and listen. If you dislike what I say, you may leave." Sa'd sat. He listened, and his heart was opened. That very day, he embraced Islam, and with him, his tribe followed. This happened again and again. Yathrib was not won over by speeches. It was changed by sincerity. Through his gentle manner and truthfulness, Musab turned enmity into brotherhood. It is said that by the time he returned to Mecca, nearly 1/3 of Yathrib had entered Islam. He led the first public Friday prayer in the city. He taught the people Quran, prayer, and the basics of faith. But more than that, he showed what it means to live Islam, quietly, fully, and with integrity. His work culminated in the second pledge of Al-Aqaba. Over 70 Muslims from Yathrib came to Mecca to pledge not only their faith, but their support and protection of the Prophet. This pledge laid the foundation for the Hijrah, for the Islamic State, for the Ummah. And who prepared this ground? Not a warrior, not a statesman, but a young man who gave everything for the truth, and who walked gently, carrying the greatest message. The story of Musab ibn Umair is not simply a tale of the past. It is a mirror for our present. Even today, we face the same questions. What truly matters? What are we willing to give up? And what do we really live for? Musab's life was shaped by a radical decision. He let go of everything that once defined him, not out of pain, but with clarity. In return, he gained something that no wealth could ever replace: truth, dignity, and the eternal nearness to Allah. His path shows us that real change is possible, if we are willing to be honest. From his life, we draw 3 lessons, 3 inner compasses to help guide our own. Firstly, true greatness begins with letting go. Musab was once immersed in comfort and admiration, but when truth reached his heart, he chose faith over fame. In our time, we are told that giving up means losing, but Musab teaches us, to let go for Allah is not a loss, it is liberation. Freedom begins when we release our attachment to status, wealth, and people's opinions. To live for what is eternal means to live lightly, with clarity and purpose. He reminds us that true greatness is not built on what we own, but on what we're willing to leave behind for Allah. Secondly, character speaks louder than words. Musab did not convert Yathrib through debate. He transformed it through example. His humility, calmness, and honesty opened hearts. Today, we are surrounded by noise. Everyone speaks, but few live what they preach. Musab reminds us, the most powerful dawah is not in argument, but in being, in walking with sincerity, and letting your actions speak. Sometimes, one upright soul is enough to shift the course of a community. Thirdly, the path to impact begins with service. Musab was young, talented, and bright, but he never sought titles. He did not demand honor. He served. He went where he was needed. He led without claiming leadership. And because he served with sincerity, Allah made him a key to history. In a world obsessed with recognition, Musab teaches us, work for the sake of truth, not for the applause. The way forward begins not with ambition, but with servanthood. The story of Imam Musab and the mission he fulfilled reminds us that true wisdom is not found in distraction or fleeting pleasures, but in inner focus and discipline. In a world full of diversions pulling us in every direction, Musab teaches us that real strength lies in keeping control over our attention and in dedicating our energy to what truly benefits us, whether it's knowledge, spiritual insight, or personal growth. The path to true knowledge requires patience, self-control, and the courage to question our distractions and misplaced priorities. Musab ibn Umair was not just the first ambassador of Islam. He was the living proof that true greatness does not lie in titles, but in detachment, not in power, but in sincerity, not in possessions, but in service. He gave up everything that the world could offer and gained what nothing in this world could ever buy: closeness to Allah and a place in eternity. He carried the message where it had never been heard, not with force, but with gentleness, not through pressure, but through love, not for fame, but for truth. When he died at the Battle of Uhud, there was not even enough cloth to cover his body fully. And yet, the Prophet honored him, not for what he wore, but for what he gave. Not for what he had, but for what he stood for. His name became immortal, not because he sought it, but because he gave it all up for Allah. In our time, filled with distractions and endless pursuits of status, perhaps what we need are hearts like his, humble, courageous, and free. What are you holding on to that keeps you from truth? And what would you be willing to give to walk a path that leads to the eternal? If the story of Musab moved you, share this video, leave a comment, and follow our channel so that we may continue to honor the lives of those who walked quietly, but lit the world with their sincerity.